about that, go to the flip side. All Elite Wrestling, their closing angle at AEW Dynamite, the finals of the women's bracket of the Owen Hart Foundation tournament, saw Mariah May winning and earning a championship opportunity against her friend, her mentor, Toni Storm, for the AEW World's Women's Champion at All In. And we all knew eventually there was a turn that was going to happen, but the closing shot of Mariah May holding up a bloody Toni Storm is an image that I think, again, whenever AEW produces like a highlight reel, that's an image that could be there. That should be there, really. And then on top of that, you look at the irony of Watch the Shoe, obviously one of the famous lines of Toni Storm. And it was the very same shoe that Mariah May had used to open up the wound of Toni Storm, causing her to bleed even more heavily. It was done so well. It was done so well. And you got so much emotion out of Toni Storm and Mariah May almost with a blank expression for the majority of the attack. By the way, big props to Luther for the huge bump he took off the stage through the tables. Because I don't think we give Luther enough credit. The little minute details, the characteristics that Luther does as their handler, as their butler, whatever you want to call him, have been great. Beforehand, before this gimmick, he was really doing nothing. And so seeing him with Mariah May and Toni Storm adding that comedic element, keep in mind, and he doesn't speak. He never says a word. But it's just the body language, the facial expressions. Big props to Luther. But I'm looking forward to Mariah May versus Toni Storm. And it goes back to how I opened up this episode of the podcast, where it's about story. We've seen these two women have a partnership for nearly a year now. And seeing the progression, seeing how Mariah May has really taken to Toni Storm. We all knew eventually it was going to lead to a feud, but it's just the manner in which it was executed. That is something that is very important, because even if you can see it coming, when it's done so well, you have to give it props. And AEW, again, in a previous episode of the podcast, I had mentioned is finding their footing. I think they finally have found their groove again. There was a time period there where they were kind of, hit or miss. But I think now they've found their groove, and I'm so happy for it. Because whenever you have multiple outlets of pro wrestling doing well, it's how can you go wrong? I've always said this comparison, I look at it as a buffet of pro wrestling. You like a little bit of this, I want a little bit of that, want a little bit of this, don't want that, but I'll take this. Everything's firing on all cylinders. Their storytelling has improved, because you look at AEW and their presentation, it's always been about the wrestling aspect, about what's going on in the ring. Their slogan is AEW, we're the best wrestle, but I think their story elements have improved, certainly within the last year.